Hi, it's Lauren with LaurenTeachesFlute.com and welcome to today's tutorial. So in today's video, I'd like to talk about how to take quick, full, quiet breaths in between phrases in flute playing. So this is actually going to be part 3 of the Breathing Basics series. In part 1, we talked about how to have a healthy standing posture to prepare to breathe and how to take a full inhalation. In part 2, we talked about how to hold notes for a longer amount of time on the flute. And in this part 3, we're going to talk about how to put it all together and take full breaths and play long phrases continuously. So it can be easy to start taking full breaths at the beginning, but then to keep playing long phrases of music without any rests and continue to take those healthy breaths is another story. So that's what we'll be focusing on in this video today. So if you haven't seen my part 1 and part 2 of the Breathing Basics and you're not familiar or not too familiar with the concepts of healthy standing posture, deep full inhalation, and holding notes longer and working on breath control, then I highly recommend checking out those 2 videos before visiting this one. But if those concepts are familiar to you, then we will go ahead and get into today's video. So to begin, I'd like to just go ahead and start with the exercise. So the exercise is going to be available on my website in the Student Resources section. Click on Printable Exercises and you will see it there, so you can print out this exercise or look at it on your computer screen and follow along as you're watching this video. And also just print it out and use it in your warm-ups if you choose to do that. So the exercise is very similar to the De La Sonorité long tones by Marcel Moïse. So it's very similar to that. We'll start on B above the staff and we'll go to A sharp or B flat and go chromatically down 2 notes at a time. But I'm going to hold each note for 4 counts each at quarter note equals 60 beats per minute. And I'll explain all the rest of it in a minute, but if you're a beginner and you only know a few notes, maybe all you're working on right now is B, A, G, simply apply this exercise to the notes that you're working on and it will work just as effectively. Just do it on the notes that you're the most comfortable with. It doesn't have to be the notes that are in this exercise. So to start the exercise, we'll hold the first note for 4 counts and the second note for 4 counts, and we're going to slur from one note to the next. And for the purpose of this video, we're going to keep it that way. 4 counts and 4 counts at 60 beats per minute. But if you so choose, you can put an optional fermata over the second note to make it a little more challenging. So after that, we'll have a 4 count rest in which you can kind of practice that full, healthy, relaxed, quiet breath that we went over and talked about in the part 1 of the Breathing Basics series. And then you'll do the second group of 2 notes, then a 4 count breath, and then the next 2 notes. Okay, so that's the exercise, and then we're gonna make it a little more challenging in a minute. And so on. So you'll do the 4 count breathing in between each group of 2 notes. To make it a little more difficult, I'm going to just go ahead and talk about the next parts to make it more challenging. You'll take the 4 counts out and you'll make it 2 counts, and this is written out in the exercise. So you'll take the 4 counts out and you'll make it 2 counts, and you'll try to get just as full and healthy of a breath, just as relaxed and just as quiet as well in 2 counts instead of 4. And then you'll reduce it down to 1 count rest to take that deep, full, quiet breath. And then eventually you'll take out all the rests and you'll just take a quick breath at the end of the 8 counts. Now you will end up resting for about an 8th note or hopefully shorter. Try to make it no longer than an 8th note gap between breaths. And this is kind of what we have to do. We have to take a tiny bit of the last part of the long note out to get to the next note on time. So that's the exercise. You just kind of gradually take rests out, all the while you're really listening and putting a magnifying glass over, what's going on and what your breath sounds like, and making sure it's just as full, just as relaxed, healthy, and quiet and efficient as it was when you were taking a 4-count breath. So I'm going to skip over a lot of these steps, and I'm just going to do the no rest, or the very tiny rest to breathe. But no rest is written, and to breathe, you'll make it either an 8th rest or shorter. Just make it as quick as you can to arrive on the next note on time. So here it is. So you get the idea. So again, your goal with this exercise is to make that quick breath just as amazing and relaxed and open and quiet as the 4-count breath. So to do this and to work on this, I've kind of put together 4 questions you can ask yourself as you go through this exercise. So I'm going to share them with you right now. Question number 1, is your breath as full and quiet on the short breath as it is when you had 4 counts to breathe? If so, or if not, why or why not? Many times, as good as our intentions are of totally keeping our throat open throughout everything we're doing, we're all human, and sometimes things happen, and if we really gas out of air, it's very tempting to wait, I didn't do it. It's very tempting to do something like this. So your throat might not be all the way open. So you really want to make sure you're keeping your throat open throughout playing the flute. It's just, I like to compare it to singing opera. You need to end your notes like an opera singer, even if it's the last little bit of air, and you also need to take in air as an opera singer. Just really open and lots of space and room to take that air in. Question number 2, are you tensing up to breathe or relaxing to breathe? So I really like to think in terms of relaxing to breathe. If you think about muscling through a breath, you're kind of constricting yourself from allowing air to come in. Again, if you run out of breath, it should feel really natural to just relax and the air should just pop right in. Like so. So it really should feel like you're undoing, like you're relaxing, and if that's happening, that might be a good sign. Question number 3 is, are you dropping your jaw and opening your throat to breathe? Sometimes if I'm working with a student, maybe a beginner for example, I'll say something like, take a deep breath right here. And they will take a very deep breath, but it will sound something like this. Or they won't want to let go of their flute embouchure, or their teeth won't be open enough. And this is definitely not as efficient and quick and full as the breath could be. So we need to allow the space to take that deep, full breath. So just ask yourself those questions. Is your throat open, and are you opening your mouth enough to get a really efficient, quick, quiet breath? Question number 4, the last question, is your abdominal wall expanding, and is your rib cage lifting? So look for all those things we talked about in the previous breathing basics videos. Is your abdominal wall expanding? Are your ribs like opening up out this way? And are you lifting the rib cage as you inhale? Are you getting taller? Does it feel healthy and relaxed? If so, then that's another good sign. So after this exercise, the next step is to apply it to music. So put this exercise to a piece of music that you're working on that doesn't have any rests. Perhaps you're playing a piece where there's a lot of half notes, and maybe you're really taking a whole lot of time to breathe. So for example, and that was like a half note that I breathed on, but it didn't really sound like a half note. It sounded like I put an extra rest in. So if you want to try to make that sound like a half note, that's something you can kind of pay awareness to. Make it sound like a full half note. Get to the second beat and then a little bit after, and then take your quick, quiet breath. So you can achieve making the half note sound like somewhat like a half note by doing this exercise, playing the full half note and then putting a rest, and then gradually taking that rest out and seeing if you can maintain it while taking a quicker breath. So this is kind of a step-by-step exercise you can apply to any piece of music, and I think it can be very beneficial and help us pay more awareness to things we might not normally notice in our playing. So one last random tip I'd like to mention before ending this video is to make sure that you mark all the breaths in your music. Make sure that you do this because it sounds really not put together, kind of unplanned, kind of not as clean and sophisticated. So it's really makes a huge difference when you know exactly where you're going to breathe. So if you're playing a long etude, 1 page long, it makes all the difference in the world if you get really intentional about where you're breathing. And if you know you can make a long phrase, practice it that way. Plan on taking your huge, quick breaths, quiet, quick, huge breaths in specific spots. Put like a big giant breath mark over that spot. And yeah, so apply it to music, but also pay very careful attention and be very clear about where you're going to breathe. It makes a huge difference in making your playing sound much more natural and better phrasing and much more sophisticated. So I think that's it for the video today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe below for more tutorials like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!